Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I thought I would share with you guys my spring 2024 TBR. I almost said my spring 2024 fall TBR. That is not it. Spring TBR. I've got some arcs that I'm going to be reading over the next couple of months that I can't wait to tell you about. Plus some physical copy books here. Some are kind of going to bleed into my books I'm going to be reading for my podcast. And how I normally do that is I'll film a regular book talk here on the channel about the book. And then me and my good friend Krista, we do a podcast where we talk about it. So I'll share I'll post the regular video and then link the podcast you can listen to on Spotify if that's something you think you'd be interested in. Anyway, let's just get on into it. The first one was actually written by a YouTuber who I've loved for years, truly. Her name is Melanie Murphy. She's an Irish YouTuber who also is a writer. I read her first book, If Only, years ago, and I loved it. It's kind of a, like, what if you could experience how your life could have gone if you had made different choices throughout it, and I love books like that. But this one is called Glass Houses, and I think it came out in like 2019 or 2020. Let me see. 2022. I'm not as far behind as I thought. I love that. Let me read you the back. I know it's about two sisters, but that's honestly all I really know. I ordered it because I couldn't wait to read it. So let's see. Sisters Jenna and Rosie bring out the worst in each other, so they mostly keep their distance. But Jenna has suddenly found herself with no job, no boyfriend, nowhere to live, and no idea what to do next. Is life really supposed to be this difficult? Turning up on Rosie's doorstep is the last thing she wants to do, but it feels like her only option. Rosie misses her old life, the one filled with fun and travel and excitement. These days she barely has the energy for her cute friend with benefits, let alone to take care of her little sister. Why doesn't she ever get to put herself first? Somehow the sisters find themselves roped into a community project, forced to work together, as the group brings an overgrown garden back to life. Curious, maybe even magical things begin to happen. New friendships blossom and old wounds start to heal. But will Jenna and Rosie finally find their way back to happiness and each other? I love that. As someone with a sister, I love books about sisters. I always do. So next up, this one is going to be one of the podcast books. And this is a book that every time I tell someone I haven't read it, they're like, you need to immediately read it. And that is The Invisible Life, look at this cover, of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I love V.E. Schwab, and this book sounds right up my alley. It's like about a woman that makes a deal with like a demon to live forever. And of course, like, you've got to be careful when you're making these types of deals because there's always like a twist that you don't want. And for her, it's that she'll live forever, but nobody will remember her. So like, as soon as they walk away from her, they won't ever remember that they met her, which of course would lead to a very lonely life. But then one day she walks into like a store, a bookstore or something, and someone in there says her name, like they remember her. And I guess it goes from there. I guess also once a year she meets up with this demon. I can't wait to read it. Everyone I know that's read it has loved it. Also for the podcast, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I know this, or Gabrielle Zevin. I know this book has been beloved. I know that the year it came out, which was that 2022 or 2023? Let's see here. 2022. It was beloved. It was like on so many people's best of lists. I know in like the Goodreads Choice Awards, it was definitely nominated, maybe even won. I'll know more when I come to film the actual book talk on it, but I know this is about two friends, and it spans over like 20 years, their friendship and their love for each other. And they're like video game developers, and they develop a game together, which becomes like hugely successful, very popular, and it just kind of grows from there. And I love those stories that, like One Day, if you've read that or seen the movie, and I guess the show as well now on Netflix, that revisits people, like a pair of people, time and time again over the years. It's probably why I also love the like before sunrise, before sunset, before midnight movies by Richard Linklater. I love that. I love them so much. Next, I've got a few classics. One will be on the podcast. Let me grab it here. And that's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I haven't read this in, I don't know, 20 years? Is that right? Feeling very old. But yeah, like 20 years. Probably when I was like 20, 21 years old. And Krista's never read it. So this is going to be a podcast episode. And I can't wait for her to read it and for us to talk about it. It was the one and only novel that Sylvia Plath wrote before she died. And it says, when Esther Greenwood wins an internship on a New York fashion magazine in 1953, she's elated, believing she will finally realize her dream to become a writer. But in between the cocktail parties and piles of manuscripts, Esther's life begins to slide out of control. She finds herself spiraling into depression and eventually a suicide attempt as she grapples with difficult relationships in a society which refuses to take women's aspirations seriously. I can't wait to read it again. I think Chris is going to love it, and I think it's going to make for a great episode. Today I was in HomeSense when I went to the city, and I saw this really amazing copy of Dracula. I wish you could feel it. It's almost like velvety to the touch. And I've got probably 3 copies of Dracula, but not this one. So it's making me want to reread it. Again, this is one I haven't read in a long time, and it's so beautiful. So I'm thinking I'm gonna read it this spring, but then I keep going back and forth, like maybe wait till the fall and more into spooky season, but I don't know. So I'm putting it in this one. If we don't get to it, it'll be in the fall. The other classic I'm going to be reading, I'm actually going to start filming the video because I'm doing a reading vlog on this one, and this is Emma by Jane Austen. Look at this cover. She's been around for a while. I know I've shown you this cover probably 10 times. But we're finally going to read it and do a reading vlog, so I can't wait for that. So those are the physical copies, and then I've got 3 arcs that I'm going to be reading shortly. So I'm going to tell you about them. First up is called what is it called? The first one is called Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser Ackner. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But it says, an exhilarating novel about one American family, the dark moment that shatters their suburban paradise, and the wild legacy of trauma and inheritance. From the New York Times bestselling author of Fleischman is in Trouble. Were we gangsters? No. But did we know how to start a fire? In 1980, a wealthy businessman named Carl Fletcher is kidnapped from his driveway in a cloistered town on the nicest part of Long Island, brutalized and held for ransom. He's returned to his wife and kids less than a week later, only slightly the worse, and the family begins the hard work of moving on with their lives, resuming their prized places in the saga of the American dream, comforted in the realization that, hang on, I took a screenshot, but it got cut off. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry you guys. Comforted in the realization that, though their money may have been what endangered them, it's also what assured them their safety too. But nearly 40 years later, when Carl's mother dies and the family comes home to mourn her, it becomes clear that perhaps nobody ever got over anything after all. Carl has spent the ensuing years secretly seeking closure to the matter of his kidnapping, while his wife Ruth has spent her potential protecting her husband's emotional health. And their three grown children are each a mess as well. Nathan's chronic fear won't allow him to advance at his law firm. Beamer, a Hollywood screenwriter, will consume anything, substance, food, women, in order to numb his own perpetual terror. And Jenny has spent her life so bent on proving that she's not a product of her family's pathology that she has come to define it. I love a good family dysfunction story. Next up, we have I Was a Teenage Slasher from Stephen Graham Jones, which if you've been around this channel for a while, you know how I feel about him as an author. Love him so much. So it says, from New York Times bestselling horror writer Stephen Graham Jones come a classic slasher story with a twist. Perfect for fans of Riley Sager and Grady Hendrix. 1989, La Mesa, Texas, a small West Texas town driven by oil and cotton, and a place where everyone knows everyone's business. So it goes for Tolly Driver, a good kid with more potential than application, 17 and about to be cursed to kill for revenge. Here, Stephen Grant Jones explores the Texas he grew up in, the unfairness of being on the outside, through the slasher horror he lives, but from the perspective of the killer, Tolly, writing his own autobiography. Find yourself rooting for a killer in this summer teen movie of a novel gone full blood-curdling tragic. Yes. Yes, Stephen, I cannot wait. And then finally, we have How to Film or How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive by Craig DeLuey. And this says, from New York Times bestselling author Craig DeLuey comes a darkly humorous horror novel that sees a famous 80s slasher director set out to shoot the most terrifying horror movie ever made using an occult camera that might and probably is demonic. Horror isn't horror unless it's real. Max Maury should be on top of the world. He's a famous horror director. Actors love him. Hollywood needs him. He's making money hand over fist. But it's the 80s, and he's directing cheap slashers for audiences who only crave more blood, not real art. Not real horror, and Max's slimy producer refuses to fund any of his new ideas. Sally Priest dreams of being the final girl. She knows she's got what it takes to score the lead role, even if she's only been cast in small parts so far. So the two of them meet, and I'm guessing it all goes sideways. Anyway, you guys, that's going to do it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you plan on reading over the next few months. It's already so warm in here. I'm going to need to get some sort of fan set up because it's warm. Anyway, thank you again. If you like this, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.